Well, hello, everyone. I would like to welcome everyone to the Swiss Re Corporate Solutions webinar, Mitigating Claims Fraud Through Technology and Collaboration. So really glad to have you here. We have a lot of great material that we are excited to share with you in this exciting session. So again, I want to thank you for joining. Before we get started, just want to kind of bring your attention in the left side of your screen. There is a Q&A chat box, and this is where I'm going to be monitoring. So at any point in time, if you have any questions at all on any of the content that we're discussing, or if we happen to ask a question, this is where you're going to want to put it, right in that chat box. And then I will be monitoring that throughout the entire session, and we absolutely look forward to engaging with you. You know, we see that we have a wide variety of folks on the call, and we really look forward to those different perspectives on this great topic that we're going to talk about today. Now, if by chance you have any technical difficulties at all you have to do is hit Control and F5. Okay, so Control F5, and then we can engage with you and try to troubleshoot the issue. Hopefully that won't happen, but just so you know, Control F5, that's like the red button, the eject button if you need help, okay? So glad to have you here. So what are we going to talk about in this session? We're going to talk about insurance claims fraud, mitigating risks through technology and collaboration. So what is really exciting for us is, you know, we know that claims fraud is a huge, huge problem. You know, I mean, firstly, it's hard to quantify. Studies show it's about an $82 billion problem. And, you know, coupled with the fact that a lot of the public, about 25%, feels it's okay to commit some aspect of fraud, these statistics work against us. They show that we have to focus on this area. And this is an area that all three of us are very, very much in tune with. We have many years of experience in this area, and we want to share those experiences with you and talk about how to mitigate risk through using technology and collaboration. And that's really the idea. We want to create that awareness of fraud, number one, but also create a kind of an understanding of the value that SIU and the Special Investigations Unit can bring to that whole entire claims process. You know, we call that the claim ecosystem. So everything from onboarding all the way through settlement, subrogation, doesn't matter where you sit within that platform. This is what we want to do, is we want to increase awareness and discuss how we can work in collaboration towards that goal of fighting fraud, because we know how damaging that can be. So, you know, we don't want it to be seen as kind of a stop or a cog in the wheel of the process, but SIU can add a lot of value, and this is what we're going to talk about today. So kind of working on that collaborative model, we're going to talk about some solutions. We're going to tackle some of the most important topics in fraud from our perspective and from our years in the industry, and then also talk about some solutions, you know, some ways that companies, carriers, no matter where you sit, what type of organization you're in, some preventative methods that you can take back with you on a human aspect, but also on a tech aspect. You know, we're going to talk about those really, really exciting things. So we are really, really excited to get things started. But before we do, I just want to introduce our panel. We have some fantastic knowledge base going on here. So firstly, I'd like to introduce David Borum. So David is Special Investigations Unit with Swiss Re Corporate Solutions. David has over 20 years of investigative experience in white-collar crime, money laundering, insurance fraud, and healthcare fraud. So all areas of fraud and scams David has specialized in. He currently serves as a director of the board of directors for the International Association of Special Investigations Units. So very excited to have David here today. We also have Mr. Jeffrey Branch. So Jeff is also a CFE. Actually, David's a CFE as well, Certified Fraud Examiner. Jeff has 20 years of law enforcement experience, including 16 years with the Florida Department of Financial Services, Divisions of Insurance Fraud. He specializes in complex white-collar crime investigations, such as avoidance, money laundering, racketeering, and different areas of financial fraud schemes. So a lot of experience there. Myself, my name is Michael Skiba, also known as Dr. Fraud, so I have an alter ego. So I wear two hats, one in academics, so I like to bore students in my spare time as a professor for about 15 years in the area of white-collar crime and economic crime. and also as a practitioner. So I've been in the industry 25 years in special investigations myself. So heavily involved in different social media outlets as well. So, and I quite enjoy publishing and spreading the word on fraud. So between the three of us, we're going to really tackle this issue today. So what I'd like to do is, in this interactive format, so David, Jeff, and myself, we're going to be discussing, again, mitigating risk. But what I want to do is I'd like to kind of start off by asking David a question here to kind of lead us off. So, David, can you talk to us a little bit about the role of SIU and claims? And I mean, I think at the end of the day, we understand, the policyholders, they are so important to us. But can you discuss kind of the synergy, what you've seen in your years in SIU and in claims in different areas of how, what that role is and maybe where it should be evolving to?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I would say that the role of SIU for most companies, especially Swiss Re, is to provide the guidance and the support to our claim handlers for them to properly investigate the claim from their side and adjudicate that claim per our claims commitment. We have a claims commitment at Swiss Re. It's all over our website. It's one of our brandings. Some of the claims commitments, 3 key points. Your claim will be managed proactively, fairly, and with great care. Number 2, we will listen to and respect your point of view, look to understand your needs, and be there when you need us. Number 3, we are committed to building a foundation of trust based on open, transparent communication, even before a claim occurs. So our ultimate goal is to protect our policyholders. That's key number 1. And 95% or more of the claims fraud that we investigate involves third-party claimants. So you have an insured, and then you have a claim filed against that insured by a third party. And with the tools that we have at our disposal to investigate that claim, a lot of times we'll save the SIR or the deductible for that insured, resulting in them ultimately saving money.
And that's a great point, David, and I think it's one just worth visiting. And you mentioned this because there's different areas of fraud that we look at, right? And the first party fraud that is, we're going to get into that a little bit as well, and that's the policyholders committing fraud. But the mention of the third party fraud. So these aren't even policyholders that are paying a premium to us. These are not customers of ours, right? And I think that's what's important, right? Because we owe it to our customers to protect them, right? I think that's important to mention. So, Jeff, do you have any insights on this? Anything you'd like to add?
Well, yeah. I mean, just to piggyback on what David said, and welcome everybody, and thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Yeah, I mean, I think, and we'll talk a little bit more about perception of SIU as we go along, but yeah, I think the understanding has to be that for all our business partners, we're not going to say no for a request of some type of assistance, and so at the end of the day, when we leave here, we hope that there's a better understanding that we're a resource, and we're, like you said, Mike, we're not stopping the wheel from rolling. We're helping it roll faster because we're helping in the decision-making process.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things too, in special investigations, we do have those resources to assist, right? To assist claims, even on just a handling basis. And this is something where, this is something we do well. We're experts in exactly what we do. So as you mentioned, looking at that, kind of changing the perspective a little bit into that collaborative model, I think is absolutely key. So yes, definitely. So let's kind of transition. So now we talked a little bit about the first party aspect of it, the third party aspect, but at the end of the day, right, it's about that protecting the policyholders. It's about a profitable business as well, because if we know statistics show, I mean, I've seen anywhere, from 5% to 20% of all claims that come in are fraudulent, and I mean, it's incredible. A statistic is so dynamic, and I think it's really important to think about that, when you talk about the claim volume that we get, that many should be, should be looked at, should be addressed. And even just doing the math on that is incredible, right? And that's translated back. If we lose that money, that's translated back to the policyholders, and premiums and things. So, again, having a strong SIU in that collaborative model, I think is so, absolutely critical. So let's talk about the workflow, okay? Because it's so important to talk about that. How do we work in this scenario? How do we create those workflows? At all those different stages, but specifically in the claims triage. What cases go where? To keep, because what we want to do is those customers that are loyal, that are legitimate, that don't have any fraudulent indicators involved in their claim, it's so critical. So how do we work on creating those workflows in that environment? So David, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would say that through investments that Swiss Re has made, some of them were recently in the media about our deal or engagement that we made with Alphabet to have more of a risk management side of the house on claims for employer stop loss. But through investments into machine learning and AI, we're able to streamline and fast track those claims that do not meet the need for further investigation. By doing this, it's resulting in faster payouts to our customers, and that's also in accordance with our claims commitments. Some of the other aspects of it, traditionally SIU received our referrals from a claim handler, and I'm not going to say a lot of stuff gets missed, but there is quite a few things that gets missed and not referred over to SIU. So now with increased technology, used to a claim file would be like a phone book. It would be tons of paper, hard to go through, hard to find what you were looking for. But now with a more streamlined digital claims database, claims document imaging, claim notes, we're able to create fraud models and use technology to weed out some of those potentially fraudulent claims. And once again, I'm talking about third-party claims. Our captive data that we use, that we have access to, claimants' names, addresses, dates of birth, socials, whatever it may be, we're able to cross-reference those with industry databases that contain a pattern of fraudulent behavior by these individuals. And one of the greatest success stories that we had was we were able to save this particular insured. I think it was around their SIR was around $10,000. We found the fraud. We paid out on a couple of claims. It was a third-party claim. We found the fraud. It was an organized ring that hit us, and we were able to not only recover or recoup the funds that were paid, but in order to make the insured whole, we reimbursed their SIR of $10,000 each occurrence, each claim, all the way up to I think 5 claims. So we were able to get the $50,000 back and send that straight to our insured. So that's a huge success. So that's just one of the examples that how we can utilize technology for our benefit, for the protection of our policyholders.
Yeah, and I think, David keyed in on some really nice points there. And I think, the third-party data, when you talk about that, I think that's critical because, one of the things that we can do with technology is, and this is what's so important, is we know that there is the human element, right, to all of this. We know we need the experts. We need to know what we're looking at, in the fraud space. But coupled with technology, it is a win-win. I mean, with those two, I mean, you're creating a winning football team right there, right? I mean, it's incredible because you can, like you said, you can take those, you can decide with your experience, okay, this is a database we want to link to. This is a data source we want. And that can be operating behind the scenes, so as you mentioned, traditionally maybe you would get claim referrals for SIU from the frontline claim representative, that would just be talking to an insured or claimant and think, wow, something's weird here, some of those red flags, no police report, new policy, things like this, right? Which is still important, but then you also have the safety net as well, so you have kind of multiple sources of referrals, both working in concert with one another. So I think it's so critical. And really the second point, which you keyed in on, which is spot on, was talking about, those systems also, when you create a strong triage, right? I mean, you're taking care of your good customers, right? I mean, you're saying, okay, yeah, this is a good claim. This is a great customer, no fraud. And you can cue that into a workflow in the triage to say, let's get this taken care of quickly, right? I mean, use those, those tools, get them the payment quick, use the online transactions. I mean, whatever it could be. So definitely key points. So Jeff, I'm gonna turn it to you. Any thoughts on the triage from your perspective, with the workflows?
Yeah, a lot of fantastic information on this slide. So if I go back to the workflow and I say this, the vast majority of claims are valid and need to be addressed and paid as quickly as possible. But we can't ignore, the 5 to 20% that you mentioned that we don't know about. And so we're stuck in this workflow of, we don't want to get stuff that's not actionable. We don't want to overly burden any of our other units who are working on either a claim or a file or something to be going needle in a haystack and trying to find this. See, our goal is to make the process smoother, not make it more difficult. So, and I know you're going to talk about it, Michael, a little bit about, where the rubber meets the road when artificial intelligence starts sending us stuff that the claim handlers don't even have to look at. But of course, there's going to be a balance there too. And one more point that I wanted to touch on that David touched on is the lack of understanding at some levels that large commercial insurers are actively targeted by organized groups as fundraising for whatever the rest of their illegal activity is. And so when you talk about what came out of Louisiana 2 days before Hurricane Laura hit, is the U.S. Attorney's Office charged, 10 or 12 people with intentionally crashing motor vehicles into semi-tractor trailers so they could capitalize on the high policy limits on the tractor trailers. And one of the individuals acknowledged that he had, in fact, been involved in 100 intentional crashes with tractor trailers. So I think that's obviously the stuff that SIU needs to see because you're talking about active criminal organizations that are targeting us as a victim. But I think the workflow also, and I'll talk about it on the next slide, is that we need to not overly burden people to be looking for this stuff. There's got to be, an automated portion of it. Can't take their human touch out altogether, but yeah, there's got to be an automated portion of it that smooths it out and takes the unknown of SIU out of, well, should I send this to them? Well, should I not? We'll decide, and then if it's anything, we'll get back to you, and then your process is solved easier. So that's kind of my perspective.
Absolutely. And yeah, it definitely ties in with, again, like you said, that balance, the collaboration. That's why it's so important to keep those communication lines open. I also see some questions in the chat, so fantastic. Keep those coming in. We had a question come in. What percentage of fraud is detected by ISO indexing? That's from Jim. Thank you, Jim. So Jeff, David, would you guys like to take it, or would you like me to? So what percentage of fraud is detected by ISO indexing?
Well, yeah, I'll take that one.
I can. All right, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I would say with ISO indexing, the way I look at it, there's two or three different ways to ISO index. You have the automated indexing that comes back with the match report, and that's only as good as the information that's being submitted into ISO. However, there is another way of looking up ISO And with ISO, the access that we have as claim handlers and SIU, we can physically go into ISO and plug in all these different ways of searching data. And that's how you're going to find a lot of the fraud or a lot of the questionable claims and the claim history. So you have to do it manually. Although there is that component that does get that index match report. But someone's got to review it, and you've got to dig a little bit deeper. So to answer your question about percentages, I would say probably out of all the claims that are indexed, every claim gets indexed, I would say probably out of those, 2% maybe.
And Mike, if I could offer that, and you and I have spoken about this, the automation portion of searching ISO data, and I know that you're going to get to that, and that gives you a little bit more finite amount that you're finding. But I look at ISO as the tip of the iceberg, because ISO is going to give you some stuff that is going to start you looking in the right direction. Someone has claims under 2 Social Security numbers. What you would normally have to do manually, well, that can be done. So yeah, I think ISO is the tip of the iceberg. You get into it, and then you figure out where you're going to go from there.
Yep, exactly. And like you said, you know, it has to fit within the workflow as well. You know, of that the process. It's how you process already. So yeah, definitely. So let's well, yeah. Thank you for the question. Keep those coming in, and I'll continue to monitor. I see a couple more in there as well. And we're going to key on some of those points in there as we go through. So let's talk a little bit about you know, traditional versus future. So David, talk to us a little bit about, you know, we touched on it already, you know, kind of you know, where we're going, where we're headed in SIU, and you know, where were we?
Yeah, just piggyback a little bit off of the comments about Jim's question. There is technology, this is talking about the future. There is technology out there, a user platform or a user interface that companies have developed, black box technology and white box technology, that will, behind the scenes, proactively examine the data, look at criminal history, look at court records, civil records, criminal records of captive data that we have. And I'm referring to claimants. So talking about ISO, there is the white box technology would be looking at forewarned reports, those reports that definitely deal with fraudulent claimants, and then spotting those and identifying those and flagging them for us to look at further. But the future of the relationship between claims and fraud, it's out there. It's a topic that fraud is going to keep thriving unless we put a stop to it. And we're making small dents into the fraudsters, but then they just recreate their scheme and use different names or use different identities. But as soon as an organized group realizes that one particular company doesn't tolerate fraud, then guess what? They move to another company where they know they can get easy money.
Yep, absolutely, David. And I think, too, that you also touched on one of the questions Dana posed about will AI help prevent fraud, or is it more helpful to identify? So we touched on it here, Dana. We'll get to that right towards the last section where we're going to focus on technology. But, yeah, we definitely have some strong answers there, and I think it's really a combination of a lot of different strategies, as David mentioned, because these organized criminal groups, they do target, they will target you if you're an easy prey, we say. So it's critical to do that. And David, I think when you talk about this, we understand, we talk about the ecosystem and claims and insurance in general. I mean, how do we get the buy-in, we call it, from the decision makers about SIU and the process and everything that the resources that are needed? I mean, how, in your opinion, is the best way to approach that?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. How do we get the buy-in? Well, it comes from the top. It comes from the top of that organization or that entity. At Swiss Re, we have a new Chief Claims Officer. His name is Mark. He started with Swiss Re back in June. He is pro-SIU. He's pro-fraud. He wants to, he believes that the ROI for creating an in-house fraud modeling or data analytics or even going outside will be beneficial to our customers, will be beneficial to us, and then on the reinsurance side of the house, they're doing the same thing, working with cedents to try to find that fraud before it gets kicked up the layers of reinsurance. So to answer your question, it has to be a company-wide approach from the top down. And if you have the buy-in from the top, then everything should flow into process.
Yep. And now, Jeff, how about, from your position as well, working, for law enforcement. So obviously, in your position, your prior position, became involved in cases, from insurance companies. You collaborate with insurance companies on these type of things. So how about your perspective on the buy-in?
Well, now that I'm in this role, the buy-in, and I think you're going to describe the buy-in, pretty well when you talk about your part. You got to show results, and if you can show them on a small scale, and then spread it out slowly to make it, company-wide, I think you got to show results. And I think you and I, and probably David, I've shared this conversation with you. I sat in a presentation, and someone was championing their data analytics program. They said, well, it increased our referrals by 65%. So of course, I'm waiting for the answer, the next answer. Well, how many of that increase was actionable? Were they false positives? How do you develop this screening or this scoring model? So I think success. You got to show success, and success means, at the end of a successful SIU investigation, it may not necessarily mean you found fraud, but it means you answered any questions that may have been out there lingering for whatever reason that made that decision-making process a little bit easier. So I see buy-in, as David said. Yes, the organization has to embrace it, but they also have to see the results. When you send something over there, look, I get the answers I need, I get the work I need. If there is fraud, they find it, etc. So that's how I see it.
Yep, and I think the metrics are so important, and you mentioned it though. Metrics are important, but you have to look at what's behind it, right? Because if you're not, converting that percentage, and I know, right, that number, if we see, well, we identified another 60, 65, 80, whatever it is percentage, that to us, it almost makes us laugh, right? We know that's not possible. So then we say, okay, well, what's behind the metric? We need to understand it. But then, right, more importantly, well, what does that do? That, getting that many claims over to SIU just bogs the system down. That way you're not looking at the most important ones, right? And that's the key, because you want to look at those cases that you have a good chance for success at, a good chance to help protect your policyholder, to save money on, to avoid being the easy target, like David mentioned before. And I think that's really the key. So, yeah, showing the value, from a financial standpoint, but also from a support standpoint, is absolutely critical to the key decision makers in any organization, for sure. Now, are there ways, David, to strengthen the relationship, claims SIU? Because that's, we don't want it to come across, like Jeff said, we don't want it to come across as a cog in the wheel, where it's seen as a negative when special investigations is involved. What in your opinion do you see has worked to help strengthen kind of how they work synergistically together in collaboration?
Yeah, for us at Swiss Re, it's the common denominator is that we are the partner. We're the partner with claims. If claims has any questions about any claim that they want us to look at, we have an open door policy. They come to us through text or through Skype or through email or a phone call, and then we work in cohesiveness with them, in conjunction with them, and it's a partnership. It's a partnership, and if you have a success story, then that success story is talked about within the claims department, and then they realize what steps were taken to get to the conclusion that we got to. And then another big thing is our insureds. Our insureds are so happy whenever we find fraud for third-party claimants because we save them money. We save them their deductible, the SIR. And the other thing is just recouping money on proven fraudulent claims that we get promissory notes, or we get the case adjudicated and we get restitution. Those are just huge wins, and it shows that we are doing our duty to protect our policyholder through all sides of the claims process.
Yeah, and I think, and that's critical, right? And on many fronts, because these, like you said, the success stories really show, where the rubber meets the road, if you will. This is what we recovered back from all of the efforts, all the way through the process. That these are not just cloud numbers or smoke and mirrors. These are real cases and things that can actually, assist with the the collaborative model. So absolutely. So great insights. So Jeff, I want to turn to you for a second. And what I'd like to do is, can you talk a little bit about, and David mentioned this, and can you discuss a little bit about, the relationship between claims? So David just kind of led us down this path of what that collaborative model would look like. And, what would you think that would look like in the future? Best case scenario. What should it, what will it look like, and what should it look like? And actually, if you can go to the next slide, that'd be great.
Yeah. So what David mentioned. So this collaborative effort. My big thing is this: if in the future we've removed the unknown about working with SIU, and we do that in several ways. We have more interaction, we have more success stories, we have artificial intelligence, we have more interaction with the claims team. Someone recently said to us, well, it's not a claims issue, it's an SIU issue. Well, SIU is embedded in claims. We're simply a resource for claims. So to say that we would not, they're not mutually exclusive. If it's a claims issue, if it's an SIU issue, it's a claims issue. And so I want to remove the unknown. I want to remove the fear of using the fraud word. And in fact, there's some states that are extremely strict. Not only can we not ignore the fraud word, if we don't act, then there's repercussions for us. So I just see it more as a more of an understanding that we're a resource, a tool in a toolbox, something like that. You throw artificial intelligence in on top of that, it's only going to make the team, stronger, want to work together. And I know I have it on this slide, and David will probably want to speak to it also. Obviously, with the travel restrictions, we haven't been going around to the offices. But there's been occasions where we've gone to actual insureds, large commercial insureds. We've brought the claim handlers, and we've brought some SAU personnel, and our insureds loved it because we told them, this is what you have to do when an incident, accident, injury, whatever happens here. And little things like communication and detail. We were saying, you can't just say PD the bar back. Because 5 years later, when we're looking for PD the barback to tell us what happened, we're not going to be able to find him. Because first of all, his name's probably not PD. There was probably someone named PD already, so they called him something else. So, we do that, and then we want to show as a support unit versus something that's running parallel. We want to be running with them. Kind of the way I see it. And obviously, when we go around to the offices, when we can again, we would go into the claims hubs and people would just group around us, and we would have these, 30 or 45-minute discussions about this, and hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And lo and behold, we get back to the office, and the next 30 days, we get an increase in referrals of 25%. But that's not by accident. It's because we got to interact. Now, artificial intelligence hopefully takes a little bit of that out of it so they don't have to look for it. But I think that's how you strengthen the team, and it's going to take a little while in this environment now because we're doing everything virtually.
Right. Right, exactly. And then this key kind of gets into, another question we had here about your training. So you actually started to talk about this. So could you expand on this a little bit more, some of the side benefits of regular anti-fraud training? And you just actually mentioned a couple of them, but maybe just to key in on that just a little bit more.
Well, I think the first thing is regular anti-fraud training. You get your trends and conditions of things that are going out there in the industry, like I mentioned about the intentional crashing into the tractor-trailer rigs. David mentioned the ring that was going around with foodborne illnesses. So that's what you get that on the radar of all your claims people. Hey, you don't need to remember these names, but remember this scheme because people are doing it all over the place. The carriers who are not combating it and they're becoming the path of least resistance. So I think they get the trends, but they also get the interaction, and I think that the level of comfort with the folks in the SIU that, yeah, okay, I understand. Just because I send something to them doesn't mean I'm saying that this person committed a fraud. I'm sending it to them because I think they have the resources. They may be able to help me and tell me if it is or not. I think that comfort level gets there the more interaction. And like I said, we saw it when we do the in-person training. Obviously, it's few and far between now, but when we do it and we're there and we're sitting with the teams, I think you get that comfort level. And then also you get the understanding. A lot of people, it's an unknown. Like I said, the fraud concept is unknown. And so to try to quantify it and define it, they look to us. And I think once they get that comfort level with us, I think it goes a long way. And then, again, I mean, a lot of this, you're never going to take the physical touch out of it. But a lot of this, Mike, when you start talking about your machine learning and stuff, I think you're going to see that there's going to be a need for both. We're going to get a referral. We're going to look at it. We're going to go back to the claim handler. Instead of the claim handler bring it to us, we'll bring it to them and say, listen, this came to us on the auto referral system. We either, yeah, we think something's here. No, we don't. We'd like a little more information. We'd like to talk to you about it, X, Y, Z. So that's kind of how I see the training component fitting together.
Exactly, and I think one of the keys to that as well is like you said, opening up the communication, the lines of communication between claims and SIU. And I remember, back when I used to do the anti-fraud training for when I was at SIU for my company. I mean, it was great because you'd have you'd develop a rapport and a relationship with certain members of the claim department, and they would regularly call me. They would before even making a referral, they would just run something by me. So on a one-on-one level, it helped, but also even just talking in a group was fantastic, right? I mean, I remember one specific case that came up, were the biggest cases that we investigated, which actually originated with a broker, with our sales staff, and it came about because we were talking about the case, and one of the claim individuals overheard us, and I mean, literally, it grew from there into one of the biggest cases I ever investigated when I was in SIU, and it just came from that manual effort, but through the anti-fraud training. So, David, any thoughts on this, either the future relationship, which I know you touched on, or the anti-fraud training?
Yeah, just to expand what Jeff was saying, and the communication and the open dialogue that we have, and not only with the claim handler, but the open dialogue and the communication that the claim handler has with whoever the point of contact is for our insured, whether it be the risk manager or the broker or whoever it may be. We've had situations before, several of them, where the risk manager for our insured says, this just isn't right. Can you please assign SIU on it? And the reason why they know about us is because of great success stories or great outcomes that happened before on some of their claims. So the way Swiss Re does our claim handling, we're a very small claim staff. A lot of times the same claim handler represents that client, and they develop that rapport. The claim handler develops that rapport with the insured. But yes, there have been times where just the collaboration is there between not only SIU and claims, but with our insured, and the insured once it escalated for us to do a little bit more digging on it.
Yep. And then, when we talk about, these types of situations, so what would be some, specific examples that you guys can think of, of situations where the claims department actually, identify the case that went to SIU. So I guess two parts to the question we can talk about for a little bit. So if you can think of like one specific example, and then we can talk about some red flags, because I saw a few questions. On that. I don't know if David or Jeff, you want to kind of take the lead on that.
I have a sort of a kind of in line with the ISO question and kind of in line with the last bullet here, and then I can certainly go into a success story or two. But along the lines of ISO, and an example that I have, and something that you can talk about, Mike, at length, and I think you're going to. So I had an instance where a claim handler said, "Wow, I was poking around in ISO, and I think this person is using 2 Social Security numbers." Now, what's the famous saying? We don't know what we don't know. If that person hadn't been diligently, manually poking around into ISO, they may not have come up with that other Social Security number. Now, we know that artificial intelligence could have told us that as soon as the claim landed in the inbox, because they would have already scrubbed all that data and said, this person is associated with 2 Social Security numbers. Huge catch. When someone is making a claim and they're representing that they don't have any pre-existing conditions or pre-existing injuries or any other accidents of that nature, and lo and behold, you found that they've changed one of their demographic identifiers so they can clean sheet it and make the claim. That's a big, and someone mentioned red flag. So I mean, I just wanted to say a little bit about the benefits of partially automated, because that would have done it. Here our claim handler did a fantastic job manually poking around in ISO, great database, great place to start, and lo and behold, finds that the person's using 2 Social Security numbers. We could have done that in what, 1/4 of 1/2 of a second if that part of the process was automated. And then while that person is working away, you send them a message saying, when you have a moment, I'd like to speak to you, and it's you bringing it to them. Hey, just so you know, you got this in last night. We were looking at it now. It looks like you might have XYZ as far as, multiple identities or something like that. So not sure I answered directly your question, Mike, but that was kind of what I got out of that last bullet that was on the screen.
Yep, exactly. And I was getting at 2 questions, one posed by Tita about the specific examples, and it ties in exactly to what Jim asked about the top 5 red flags. And this is one thing I think we try to promote when you talk about the training, is those flag systems, what to look for. So in an automated way, we can look behind the scenes, but also as part of the training, one thing we always try to do is, discuss, these are the top things that we're seeing. These are the big, the really big pain points that we have. And I think for me, and then I'm going to ask you guys as well, one of the things I always see, and again, Tita and Jim getting both to this question, as far as flags, any type of, if it's a medical, any pre-existing condition, or if it's an auto or theft claim, any kind of priors, with the same, if it's an auto theft, if they have prior auto thefts, because what that means is that they know the system. They've already been through it. They kind of know how it works. Those are 2 big ones for me. And then the third, I would say, is a new policy. Any type of claim on new policy, I see it on the analytics end all the time, every day. It seems to be the number one, whether it's, a new claim within 5 days, 20, 30, 50, 60 days. It depends on the line of business, book of business, et cetera. That is always a huge red flag that I've seen. So I would say those are 3 for me. I don't know, Jeff or David, if you guys want to chime in as well.
I can.
Yeah, I would just say
my.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I would say my 3, and some may overlap. The eagerness, the pushiness, the demandingness of, if that's a word, of the person trying to get it resolved. It's odd. So many times when we see someone acting like that, it's because they're trying to keep their story straight. And the longer you have to keep your story straight, the more likely you are to make mistakes. So they tend to be very pushy. So that's the first one. The second one, although in and of itself it can be meaningless, if you find that someone, like you said, Mike, has been involved in the criminal justice system before, or they have a criminal history or something like that, and I'm not talking about public order crimes and, DUI and stuff like that. I'm talking about people who have been involved in some type of fraud, forgery, fraudulent behavior, theft, embezzlement, something like that. 1, they know the system, and 2, they may be taking advantage of it. I mean, there are people that do this for a living. that try to target insurance carriers. So I would say that pushiness, if they've got some kind of history and they've been involved with something like that. And I would say my third red flag would probably be, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the first one, lack of communication, cooperation. They want to know why you got to take a statement from them. They want to know why they need to produce these certain documents. The behavior of the person, for me, spawns like 2 or 3 red flags that would make me look a little bit closer at that person.
Yeah, and I would say for me, it's all the above, but there's one thing about the claims process that we have to be cognizant of, is that the claims process is them not only filing the claim, but proving their claim to us. So if something doesn't make sense, then it probably doesn't make sense. So the claims process is our chance and our opportunity to investigate that claim, find out the answers to our questions, and have the claimant properly tell us the information that we properly need to adjudicate that claim.
Right, exactly. And I think, what's important when we talk about flags, indicators, they do change, right? Different for different lines of business and different strategies, different companies. And I think it's so important that we create, in my opinion, a feedback loop, right? So we're talking to the people at the operational level, like, do these red flags make sense? Are they working? Are they not? And we visit those constantly, on a direct basis. Does it make sense? If you have a flag in, let's say, a regional area, where, up where I live in upstate New York, you have a lot of people that travel in RVs extensively in the summertime, but then they pack them up, they put them away in the fall, and they don't move till the spring, right? So there's a lot of patterning that goes on there that would make it different than someone that owned an RV in Florida, per se, right? So this is what's important to look at a flag. If you just had a blanket flag, it said something like, you're getting a lot of that RV activity all year round, well, it's going to be different regionally as well. So this is where, the expertise from SIU working with claims, but then also at the operational level, the quote unquote, does it make sense? Is this really working and doing what it's supposed to? And I think that's absolutely, absolutely critical. So let's, I want to get into the data discussion here a little bit, because it's such an important topic. And David, I'll have you kind of, Jeff, have you kind of tie in a little bit when we talk about, the two kind of last questions on your section, but it's a perfect tie-in to the data and analytics technology piece is how do you strike that balance between claim handler expertise and automation? Like what's the balance? What's the optimal point here? And then also what are some benefits of a partially automated referral process?
Well, and then I'm going to stop talking so you can get to your stuff. But I think that the example that I gave is that the little things like the duplicate Social Security numbers, and maybe someone's got claims at different addresses, the data points that get put together, I think that's something that the claim handler probably wouldn't even know to really look for if they didn't find a duplicate Social Security number, something like that. Like I said, you don't know what you don't know. So I think those types of things that would be an immediate, and obviously this is all calibrated by the people like yourself, Michael, and who are doing this, but and then you revisit it to make sure that it's working. But I think the combination is that the stuff that you want to look at, somebody's got 2 Social Security numbers, somebody has multiple claims that are very similar in fashion. All that stuff can be done and sent to us ahead of time, and so I think that part is good. Now, when you get to the personal touch, you're going to get some really complex claims that come in, especially after everything we're going through here. And we're going to get some really complex claims in. Something that may have red flags all over it that we don't even know about yet, so thus they're not into the automated system yet, and we're going to rely on our claims handlers to work their way slowly through those complex claims, come up with some decisions on what they're going to do, and if they see something, then send it to us. Now, the goal obviously is as we build out that database of what these red flags are going to be in this new era, we put them into the automated thing, and that way it takes, again, some of the stuff out of the claims handler's hands. But again, I want you to be able to get to some of the nuts and bolts, because when we talk about what's your success record, I mean that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, fantastic. And again, yeah, a great lead into kind of where we wanted to go with the session is talking about the collaborative approach in the future. And that's where we're going to kind of, work on this conclusionary section is kind of some prevention and data. So if we could go to the next slide, what we're going to talk about here is technology, and the benefits. And this is an area that, I have worked in extensively. And I think one of the things in my last 5 years as a hardcore consultant in this area is I'm able to look under the hood of many, many different insurance companies, and also with the academic hat collaborate with and interview fraudsters. So I think taking those two things together has really kind of helped me develop an interesting understanding. But here's what I know is that utilizing these technology tools, they absolutely 100% help. And I will say this because technology is growing at a rate that is just astronomical. I mean, there's so much information, and I think organizations need to focus on that, right, to harness that information. Statistics tell us that, there's going to be more information in circulation in the next 2 years than in all of human history, right? So what does that mean for you listening here? Those are all data points, right? Data points on two fronts. One, that fraudsters can use against you, right? But two, data points and information that you can take advantage of, right, and use as preventative tools and methods. And I think, one of the things that we've seen good results with is, again, when a system is underlying, within the claim platform, what it's doing is you're not taking away, you're not detracting from those human components and all those things that we talked about. And, guys like David and Jeff, who are very credentialed and know what they're doing, you're not taking away from that at all. You're actually working in complete concert with that. And you're using those technology tools to mine data, to look for certain patterns, to use that expertise, to actually help filter out those fraudulent cases. And at the end of the day, that's what we're looking to do. And I think, the ultimate goal with a technology platform, right, is to identify the type of fraud, just like Jeff had mentioned very early on, that you're going to be able to convert, right? So, I mean, we see statistics that from like Jeff said, rubber meets the road. I mean, you can use a technology platform and increase your fraud detection on a very wholesome converted level, anywhere from, let's say, 5–10%. It's definitely manageable. We've seen 2%, but we've seen on a very strong level upwards of 10%. And those are strong numbers. Those are ones that I see on a weekly basis coming directly from companies. So I think utilizing those platforms, and if you do the math in that, you take your claim volume and your payouts and things like that, it's absolutely astronomical. I mean, so getting to, I want to talk about the specifics on AI because there's tons of questions on that. And Danny, you framed it up perfectly, right? The balance between using AI and then manual approaches, right? To go back to kind of what we know. And I think they can work in concert with one another, absolutely. But here's the key with AI that we know is that you have to have experts to tell the system what to run, right? So you can't just retrofit a system, plug it in, and say, okay, take off with it, right? The system needs to know what to look for. It needs to know to look for certain types of people, certain types of behavior. You have to give it parameters. And the more the system knows and learns the data, that's how AI works. It gets richer and richer and richer and stronger, right? So using those platforms, though, to help, firsthand identify getting those strong cases. So like, for example, here, a great scenario would be to set up an IA platform where that would be working behind the scenes. So David or Jeff wouldn't have to worry about it, finding the fraud or getting referrals. That system would be operating, and then it would go to them when we knew, hey, this is going to be a good win, guys. Focus on this one. Like that case I had with the broker, that's in that scenario. I wish I had a system like this. It would find that for me and find any future claims that this broker had and filter those automatically to the SIU desk and say, hey, this is fantastic. So again, the ROI we've seen is really, really incredible on these. I mean, it's such a powerful tool that it's so beneficial. And I think, these tools that are the most effective are managed by by SIUs, and they have the input, though, of the entire, ecosystem, if you will. So I think, getting right to that question, Dana, is, AI is definitely here to stay. We know that. We hear this every day, all day in our field, and it can be managed, but it has to be managed by a person. You have to still have someone that knows what to look for, what it's getting. It's not just a plug and play. Okay, so very, very good question. But again, to broaden that, broaden that up a little bit. So I know I tried to just stuff a lot in there in the last couple of minutes. So David or Jeff, I want to leave some time for you as well to kind of add your piece in on technology and what from where you sit with your organizations.
Yeah, I think that with time, as it evolves, technology will only get better, and who knows what 5 years from now will bring. So with anything, technology does get stale, so it's about finding a program that works as well as doing the necessary upkeep and updates to make it do its job throughout time.
Yeah, and I would add, and then I'll let you to go, Mike, that I just think that from an automation standpoint, it's doable, but you got to have results, and it's got to be calibrated, or if that's not even the right word, it's got to be re-looked at. You can't just set it on top of your claim system, start getting a bunch of stuff sent over to you, only to find out 6 months later, none of this is action. We can't do anything with it. These are all false positives based on how or whatever was written. So I think that's huge, and you start at a small scale, and you make sure that what's coming to you needs to come to you. And like I said, even if it doesn't end up being a fraud, somebody who has 2 Social Security numbers, that should come to SIU automatically. And I'm sure we can come up with 5 or 6 others that should automatically come to us. Now, whether it's actionable, well, you're going to have a higher percentage that those are actionable than if you just get a whole bunch of data dumped and there's nothing you can do with it. So, that's kind of the way I see it. I don't want to see an increase in referrals. I want to see an increase in actionable referrals.
Exactly, and I think one of the things that's interesting when we look at it, and we touched on this at many points in time too, is again that collaborative model. The working together, and that's really where the technology can help with that as well. So you still have those groups working together. But I mean, as a specific example, I remember one project we just recently worked on where the data was going through very, very advanced systems internally, and it was the software platform was plugged into one specific area, that was a pain point, that was a vulnerability, and it resulted in a 15% increase. It was millions and millions of dollars because we found 15% more in that little space, because that was the vulnerability, right? So that's why looking at the ecosystem, where is that? Where is that going to be? Is so absolutely critical. So I know we're just about a minute out on time. David or Jeff, any final thoughts for the group?
No, thank you for attending.
I would just say, yeah, thanks for attending, and I've got to be careful what I wish for, but I'll put it out there that we're more than happy to talk to any of our business partners about things that they can look for or do that would help them catch some of the stuff on the front end. So we'll put that out there and make that offer. And thanks again, everybody.
David, anything on your end? Final words?
No, thank you for attending, and just know that Swiss Re is in the business of protecting our policyholders, and we do a pretty good job at it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, David and Jeff, for providing your insights. Again, thank you all for attending. If there's any questions that we didn't get into the chat, we'll definitely follow up with you, at a later time. I really thank you all for your time. You guys were a really great audience, no matter where, what time zone or where you are. If you do have a second, we'd love to hear what you think about the event. If you click on a number between 0 and 10 right on the poll side, that would be really, really helpful, just so we can gain feedback on this and make this more useful down the road if we need to. Another thing too, the recording of the webinar will be available in the upcoming days. Okay, so if you do want to listen, or share it with any of your contacts, please feel free to do that. So we will make that, we will make that available. And please reach out to any of us with questions. As already mentioned, we'd be happy to continue this conversation. As you can tell, we have a lot more to talk about. So, and we love to talk about what we do. We're very excited, and we're here to help you guys. So if there's anything else you need, please let us know. And thank you again all, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.